Thank you everyone for coming. We really are happy to see such a nice crowd for James's return to Prague after, 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah.
James is an old friend of the Globe, and he's been coming here since 1993. And we usually get used to get him for readings, usually once a year or two, but since COVID he hasn't made it back, so we're excited to welcome him back. James is an internationally recognized poet, playwright, screenwriter, and essayist. He's been translated into 15 languages and appears in 30 anthologies worldwide, and he has authored 9 books, including The Talking Hours, Wound Weary, The Hunger Wall, Too Long a Solitude, and The World Shouldering Eye. Some of his many honors include 3 Fulbright professorships, 2 honorary Ph.Ds, the Emerson Poetry Prize, 9 Pushcart Prize nominations, and also, lesser known, in his younger years, he used to try out the New York Yankees and almost made a run at the Major League Baseball. He has read for 7 international heads of state, I believe 2 U.S. presidents, and for the United Nations and at Carnegie Hall. He was also a participant of the first International Poetry Festival in Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union, where he was only a handful of speakers, and he read alongside Bob Dylan and Seamus Heaney. And for 26 years before that, he was running the USC professional writing program. So without further ado, we're happy to see James back at the Globe and in Prague. So it's James Ragan, everybody.
Where is he? Did he show up?
There he is.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you for coming. I know it's a Saturday. There's so many better things you could do, but when Michael makes something available for me at this Globe bookstore, I always show up. I love it here. He's magic to this city. He's magic to this bookstore, and I'm glad that you all come here to support it. And in this case, I'll be reading poetry. I think I should begin with I remember basically hearing Mahatma Gandhi being asked, "What do you think of Western civilization?" And he responded, "I think it would be a good idea." So I realized that over the years, the whole way we look at whether it's American civilization, no matter what it is, there seems to be a breakdown in communication and community, both. And so the poems in this book, this is from my 10th book, will be addressing that in several different ways. One of them, I think I would begin with a poem called If for Each of Us. And I remember that when I came back from reading in Korea for the president of South Korea, I was exhausted. I came back home and there was my son on the ground playing with horses and soldiers, jumping them into a castle. And I remember getting down with him and playing it, and I love the simplicity of it. And I always remember that as a moment that we should address, that there are children among us right there, and there are also a need to get back to communication and the simplicity of life. So this is entitled If for Each of Us. Oh, by the way, I'm always interested in how language breaks down. I still remember being in China on a Fulbright, and there was the Pepsi Cola had their slogan on their commercials, which said, "Come alive in the Pepsi generation." But in China, they translated it as, "Pepsi brings your ancestors back from the grave." So, it's a matter of communication. Let's see if I can communicate with you a bit. Even though right now, I know being in America, Will Rogers said something that still lives today. He says, with Congress, everything they make is a joke. Or everything they make a joke is a law. Every time they make a law, it's a joke. And that's just what we're going through right now. If for each of us, a rope could swing us long and light across a widening trough of all that fails us in our lives, I would once to land upon the Isle of Echo, lush with repetition, green with being original in birth, and twice the twin a wave might dance along the scurry. I would whet a canyon tall for hawks to carry long the deep tattoo of voices on the air. I would want an ear to hear what words to read again to memory, what verse to carol, thoughts to root. Before the sparrow's flight the mind has taken comes to rest on truth. I would want to hear a vowel repeat in consonance with alliteration's frothy throat. And should the landing fail its footing, I would want to know what inspiration in shorter flight one syllable might repeat, as in the swash the flat stone makes to skip across the light and water. I would want the distance to all understanding to narrow just enough to fail at failure. I would want a memory of chances to learn to love again what first I dreamed, free as wonder, soft as touch, and of all things simple, to care again for them as much. I had the occasion, as Michael kindly said, we read for Gorbachev in 1985. There's a group of us, really distinguished. I was the least among them, but Bob Dylan, Seamus Heaney, and quite a few, Yevtushenko and others. We came back. I remember coming back to Los Angeles, waiting for my luggage, when suddenly down shot a book of poetry onto the conveyor belt. It must have dropped out of somebody's suitcase or their backpack, and it was a book of poems by Rainer Rilke. And I watched all the people watching this book go around the conveyor belt over and over, and I realized it's probably the first time most of them had been forced to acknowledge literature. This is entitled Rilke on the Conveyor Belt at Los Angeles International Airport. A rick of pages, it falls hardly noticed into motion. And down the track unspined it cycles time between a rucksack and laundry. A book no thicker than a wallet or a comb. It is the unworthy carry-on newly bought, colliding with a carpetbag or steamer on the unlikely navigation into being where it's not. Each passenger has watched it circle more than once, a bold intrusion into the archipelago of things familiar. There's no fixed point of concentration, no laughter, no elation when the eyes dissect the slow descent of baggage into orbit. As if in taking up an arm strap, each handler slews a body to the spars of his shoulder. Had Rilke himself fallen, unbound, lying in the United States, he would have passed unnoticed by the baggage check or porter who failed to think it odd or such a pity to tag him at the lost and found. How many miles had his words trespassed? How many cities alive, unread among so many ports of authority? A gold leaf of art so grand in the pall of memory, it gives the mind encouragement to survive. Unless, unsung like a soldier's duffel, duty-bound, fear spreads its tarp along the spine of language. Creation can end this way, abrupt or final, like travel to the ends of the world with no intent or vision, just destination. This is, that poem has a lot to do with the dangers of banning books, which is going on right now across the country. This one, I remember being at the Lavka, and I looked across the Vltava River, and there was this wall coming all the way down to the river. And I asked her, what is that coming down? And she said, oh, that's called Hladová zeď. It's the Hunger Wall. Charles II felt sorry for the poor, so he had them build this wall so he could pay them. First public works project in history. So I wrote The Hunger Wall, and it's been a favorite book, published and translated quite a bit. And it takes place here in Prague. Oh, I should mention here too, when I read at the United Nations, I had read this poem, and I was reminded, and my father always told me Basically, he said, you know, Slavic languages like ours, there are many consonants and very few vowels in the names. And I realized that was true. So I said this in front of the United Nations, and everybody was laughing, like, yeah, I think you're right. So I told him his favorite anecdote was about the young Czech who comes to America, and he goes to an optometrist, and the optometrist puts on a chart, and he says, can you read the third line on the chart? He said, read it, I know him. The Hunger Wall. After walking to the bridge at Karlova, we found the river where at dusk the swans dipped their beaks into the falls for sanctuary. The trees closed in for shade. We gazed through willows to the opposite hill, the single light from a room growing thick with sadness. Solemn smoke now cooked the evening meal. We were just about to treat our hunger well when out of sunlight, undeclared, a shaded massive stone began to stretch its neck along the slope. It would scan the water for a quarter hour before the foliage rubbed its throat, some internal hunger now assuaged. For only moments, then again, the impulse thumbed like whalebone on a drum. The poplars began to rustle. A hawk, spiraling like an aspen deep in chatter, betrayed its nest to block the sun. The dam below rose up to boulder water as if to show how easily wars are won. They feed the hunger wall, the waitress points, the fingers in her skirt, rubbing coins, her hands are shoring up to feed the past. I don't want the poor to endure me, she said. King Charles said to those he paid, as he watched their faces building borders, hunger for a wall, as she faced the smoldering Vltava River, watching hunger well. You know, Shostakovich once said that art destroys silence, and in this case, the idea that we somehow are so well at, we keep hunger going. We can't seem to solve that problem in the world. It's a sadness for me to see the homeless and the rest. So the next poem has to do with the homeless, especially in Los Angeles and in many of the cities in America. This one won, it was named one of the 100 best poems by Amazon of the century, so it's a big honor. It's called The Tent People of Beverly Hills. And when I read this in Moscow, Bob Dylan asked if I would sign it for his son who was celebrating his 16th birthday. And so I always know where the original copy is now. Oh, but you should know this too. There's an image of the French poet Rimbaud, but there was a young Russian girl who heard only one thing. She thought I had said, she came to me afterward at the party and she says, I loved your poem about Sylvester Stallone. Because the French poet Rimbaud, she heard Rambo. Faceless on the boulevard of mirrors. North along the flats of Rodeo Drive, stripped bald head mannequins. They come treading on the fears of high fashion, tents on their backs, and on their cheeks the beach black tar of tasteless sheet. As if to dress were not enough, we would have them wash our backhands slapped from their Rambo faces, and all through the supple stick-flash wands of their eyes, all through the wind whiskers of fishbone and sour cream, curdled by fame, they see along the deli box bins and fruit stalls of Wilshire Boulevard, the world in the room of their small walk space. They are never certain whether they are merely asked to fill a role like memory in some thoughtful dream of place, or live always short of measure in some dying minor sort of way. As if to live for time enough, we would have them end beyond their means. Hours long they scrabble onto walls and mirrors the words they would like to leave us. The haunted prints of thought falls dripping out of mind's possession like nostalgia or grief. The world has lost its face. There are no hobo kings or pioneers late to live by. When they lie above the windy steam of sewer grates, streams still and all minds gone, they warm their body holes to sleep. They wake to be awake. In the dreams of many who never took the road to gypsy sorrow, breathing is enough. It is a mistake to fill themselves alone, to fill their sky holes up with darkness. There has never been a need for crying, the dying always say. Once we move within the final inch of breath, there is no other. There are 1,000,000 tenths in the universe, with holes we mistake for stars. I was talking about miscommunication. When I read this, I remember visiting, they had us visit a Russian cemetery, and this was what they had. Talk about miscommunication. This sign said, it was in the lobby of a Moscow hotel across from the Orthodox monastery cemetery. You are welcome to visit the cemetery where famous Russian and Soviet composers, artists, and writers are buried daily except Thursday. Well, the homeless are the new ecology of the world. Listen, I was in the middle of a film we thought was going to be happening in Ireland, and there was a time when COVID hit, and COVID really hit Italy and Ireland very badly first, and so we couldn't shoot the film. And a big cast, Liam Neeson, we have all these wonderful actors. But at that same time, I lost my sister to COVID. She passed away. And then my nephew had been here in Slovakia, also passed away from COVID. This poem comes out of that experience, that no matter how bad, no matter what the horrible nature of the experience is, we must always look forward to a good sky. This is called A Good Sky. In other words, there must be some optimism left in your life. I show you a good sky. It could hold a fleet of geese above a kite, sipping in a breeze, or foliate the wind with leaves of cherry wood and hedge. It will blanket your sleep with mirrors of stars in the soft undressing of night. It will love you solely through the Venus dawn, rubbing your eyes awake the moment before the day's light hangs its scars. I show you a good sky. It will rain its reflection on your one troubled eye, the one that blinks each time a hawk rants by. I am no one's romantic. No, I am the sky's shadow wish, writing this only to breathe its light. I show you a falling sun, passing like a lover to be near you, allowing no star or bulb in a corner lamp to possess you as you are. Look, here I am, the sky's moon down. I will shave a horizon out of peaks like none your memory has ever carved. I show you a good sky. Its broad blue ribbon will wrap its mind around your eye's imagination and tease you into smiles. Now, be patient. Celebrate your days among us and let your inspiration play a while. So I should tell you, how many of you are writers here? People who are really practicing writers? Oh, wonderful. How many of you are attempting to be a writer? Now, remember this. This is very important for you to remember. No matter how low you are in your mind, I don't care how badly you are financially and you're suffering, you're getting no sleep, you are being tortured by misery, no matter how hard the life is going for you, no matter how hard it is to work on that project, on that book, on that poem, remember, nobody cares. This is a rejection slip I received from Japan. Now, when you hear this rejection, you'll feel better about being rejected. I did. This is an actual rejection slip that came back. We have read your work with inexpressible pleasure. We swear on the sacred memory of our ancestors that we have never before encountered such a masterpiece. If we publish your admirable work, His Majesty the Emperor will undoubtedly insist on its being a model for all future writing, and will forbid our publishing any work inferior to yours. Since talents like yours emerge only once in every 1,000 years, this would put us out of business. And we must therefore refuse your divine work and deposit it at your feet, trembling at the thought of the severe judgment we shall receive from future generations for failing to include in our pages work of such sheer genius. I can accept that rejection. I haven't read this one in a while, but Flannery O'Connor once was asked, do universities stifle writers? And she said, in my opinion, many a bestseller could have been prevented by a good teacher. This is called Hitchhiking to the Arctic. This is about that aloneness you must go through to create. No matter what it is, painting, music, or, oh, by the way, I should say it right now. Don't ever give up on anything you've written. Be patient. I was asked to go to Tokyo in 1977 to do a record album with Linda Carrier. She was the lead singer for Dynasty, and it was through Barbra Streisand's label, and they were using 10 of my poems as lyrics for the music. All the music was being written by major Japanese composers. We did the album. They didn't release it because Kamiko Kasai, their top recording star, covered 3 of my songs. And then Yamashita did the same. I got royalties for years. Just a month ago, I get a call from the president of Sony Music Publishing. We're releasing your album this month. 47 years later, a CD is out there right now. I bought one, yeah, oh, it's amazing. 47 years later, see? I remember doing a film that took 12 years to get to the screen. I'm saying this with good positive feelings about it. Don't ever give up on anything you believe in. Hitchhiking to the Arctic, because it's like that. It's like hitchhiking to the Arctic. There's so much loneliness to it. Any ice floe will do, but give it a name. The Paternoster for a start, or the Isle of Latitudes, drifting over ice out of Hudson Bay, seas as mixed as the Bering Strait. Choose the ice that's narrowed at each end. Your little nation's future dependent on clearing any final. I have not read this in a long time. Clearing dependent on the center, clearing any final reef the change of winds might make, and deny any possibility that you're drifting, sunless and alone, that you're deranged, confused by the solar berm you yourself have sown, and deny above all else the albatross, whose wings you've sheared as windshields to the eyes. You have a great distance of trust to cross, so little of it bearing on a compass or a star. You have only the belief. You have only the dream of being lost, the certainty that in the silence of the mouths there will come a conversation only you will hear. In that vast indifference of the ice that drops its continents an inch each year, you will survive on solitude each day and night. When even the moon your eyes betray grows darker as you grow, and all around you dance the petals of the sun, burning in the cold blue of snow. The light that draws you nearer, it's further than you know. I wish I could have been more positive, but it's still out there. All right, this one won the Emerson Poetry Prize. It's called Waiting for the Bus at Midnight. I haven't read this for a good while, but I will try. A lamppost of finger streams. A moon puffs the cloud past ghosts of autumn. Past ghosts of autumn. In a moment's hue, and kicks its muddy shoes and dusty bottom dry of the night serene. The act begins. A willow says to the snips, kneeling with a town hall clock, whispers sermons to the monk drunk with Sunday talk. Crickets lying in the mist settle to their pillows. Only the car waits, screaming as the dog wags its tail along the center stripe. Bitterns brag indifference to the star, and teenage lead, wearing slacks too tight and dreamy, who sometimes when she tiptoes up to meet his tongue, stretches worlds apart, her smile round, hypnotic. She does not hear my breathing, but lifts her lines so boldly, spinsters in bow-tressed windows, like tramps, crippled by the cold, see the smile, the rippled silhouette of forms abreast, yet do not hear his swoon stagger through the swift beneath her breast. I strain to watch the drama hands unfold and kiss her neck, its naked moles like speckled dunes or shadows stippled on the moon, while he, flipping the coin, heads and tails, saddles the bench like Brando, vacant, and overplays the role. Incidentally, I worked on The Godfather. I was a production assistant on The Godfather. Brando liked this poem a lot. I had to put him in there. Oh, and this one is just been published in the Irish Times. It's called The Weight of an Umbrella. Before its slick vinyl could wing its carapace out about the body's width of shoulders, before the tin ribs could arch to challenge the air it had displaced in the sudden lift of sky, before the knobbed handle could power up the palm's easy grip of manipulation to deflect the assault of an Arctic wind or the full force of a child's twisted sword, it had been a thing of furniture, hanging as adornment off the carved oak stair or the hook of a hat tree rack. Before I could legislate the crowning of a cap on the hard breathing of my balding scalp, it had grown to be a thing of need, like a walking cane or a tent restraining the elements of a cloud's quick temper. It had never denied its role in knowing what history of wind or sun it had rejected, what weight in swallowed drops it had to pay to save the ground from the deep soak of grime. You would think it might find a greater need than saving such a brainless head as mine. Now I want to call up my daughter. My daughter Tara is visiting. She's currently the producer writer on the Netflix series The Witcher. They're shooting it in London, and she came over here just to see us for the weekend before going back to continue shooting. And she's worked on a lot of other films. So I'm going to call her up and maybe do a poem or two. Would you do it? Okay. She's much prettier than I am.
I'll do his favorite poem.
Yeah.
So every summer we would come as a family with our dad, and we go to Strzelecki Ostrov, and it was my favorite place to go for Sunday picnic. So one day there were some special visitors on the island, and so I wrote a poem about it. My brother was very impressed by them. So this is called Sunday Picnic on the Vltava. The waves of air along the water soothe the chapped spines of young Czechs who've sheared their hair to hawk it up and away from sweat that pulls along their skull lines. They gather, clinking Pilsner bottles, punk among the mosquito weeds and silted rock the flood has left on the Ostrov strip. They know the embankment well, each grass stain and joint drag, another hip conversation raveled with the island bowls. Their black Levi's tied up with ropes are cut at the knees and dragged down to moon the jazz boats and ducks they feed with hard baguettes. And where they lose their footing in the muddy underledge of the river, they meet their reflections in the water. Wet handling their girls, they pull them down deeper into darkness until body parts are obscured. The only light reflecting like cracked beer bottle bits along the ripples the paddle boats leave behind. One emerges wearing his girl's swim top, leaving her on display to ask if it looks good on his broader shape. Beside him, a young boy, a brother, scraping up earth to build mud mounds, protecting the banks from the swans, looks on and learns how to be a man.
There you go. Now, what I didn't tell you is that her book for her master's thesis at San Francisco State won a national award, her book of poetry, Reading the Ground. And they should have had it here because I gave it to them here. I wonder if they still have it.
Which one?
Reading the Ground, years ago when it won the award. I want to do something else here, and that is my wife and I just did a cruise again, not a cruise, I never call it that, but a trip across the Atlantic on the Queen Mary 2 because they've always asked me to perform on it, so I did my 5th reading there coming over. And my wife and the reason we came over on the ship is because we were celebrating our 42nd wedding anniversary. So I was giving it to her as a gift. Here we are on the boat. So I'd like to read the poem that I wrote for her, Back When. It's for Deborah, a beautiful wife right here, the mother of that beautiful child. Sometimes, it's called, sometimes and only if one dreams as little of snow, or of crows and branches, and more of the woman who has come softly to you, raising a brow toward a door behind which a child crooks an arm above a sleeping eye. The image will turn to aureoles of dawn, gold, rose, vermilion, each in their own language. Sometimes, and only if it seems so little of the night has scuttered back into its cup, the word blue, like a runner out of breath, will fade, unfurled into a cheap-jack strip along a flag no longer striped, and spread its satin palms face up into sunlight for only the sky of her smile. And sometimes, and only in spring, a dove from the river's soft veil of lilies will fly as close to you as trust, and a calm in the great reds of autumn will, as often as you need, lie down beside you, raising a brow you've known above the eyes of the only woman you will ever have a need to dream or touch. All right, I think I'll do, I think I'll need two more. If I can, this one. There's such a thing called swan-upping in England. Swan-upping is when the Queen has the markers go out and mark up every one of the swans so that they can follow their lives. So it's called swan-upping. Well, if you've been to the Vltava, they're out there. The swans, they need to be marked. They chased us off one day. So this is called swan-upping on the Vltava. The swans gather each Sunday like choir acolytes, arching white beneath the stone locks of the Charles Bridge, as if the barge passing with a tourist crew of markers had drawn them in to ride its sifting waves, where their wings play against the willow shade, had promised them a painter's paradise. Perhaps my eyes alone directed them here, for the comfort of clouds low along the Prague skyscape, seducing them to stake a fire in the dark. Their flight now lights the heart of the Vltava, giving the sun its cue for lying down to seed the Petrin hills, giving me the eye to stare across the wide grove of thistles to count each swan with history's mark of becoming. Care to the Havel flock. They swirl their way along the spires of Hrachani, reflected from the dark tower walls, and seeing their immortal glide rise and fall like snow sweeping out the stains of autumn, I watch their slow turn on the Vltava, winding to where all vision fails, and knowing how, in my shoes, feeble lift of walking on ground, one soul leathers thin without the other, I would want to round the bend or scale the castle hill to free my nature, how each step, like a swan's flight, must dream a continent to hurdle, not by force of habit, but force of will, to soar as high as the black mute swan, freed from the reign of all things distinguished by extinction. Thank you. And I'll end with this, and this is a poem that I always end on. I wrote this for both my daughters when they first came here, and I remember watching them. I was gifted with a balcony at Havel's home. He was a drinking friend, and we were very fortunate, but I remember watching my two daughters across the bridge. And so I wrote this poem called The Astonishment of Living. I remember Emile Zola saying, I'm an artist, I'm here to live out loud. And this is about the power of dreams. I saw beneath the spreading elm two talking girls leaving rainbows in their eyes. I saw their lives on opposite shores of the river, filled up their buckets to the falls. Every drop was bathed in the fragrant shawls of eglantine. Every leaf and wind rising up to comb each branch sent a whisper out along the slope. Let go. Let go the breath and rain in every strand of light and fog. Let go of the tongue's crow until it sings along with rocks and runnels as if it were divine. Let go of honored sky and earth. Let go the horizon in between. Lose all the sunlit undulations of the season's wheat and sing. Sing out to seeds, to grass, and all that breathes into the pores of stones. Let go. Let go. Let go of the sovereign moons of space, the celestial laws of Ariels breathing out a planet and pulsing out its days. And where the stars ignite in showers, let them fall. Recite the moment's song that tomorrow wind will bring in squalls. Free the century's melody as you would a line or burden down a well. Allow the astonishment of living, one reed or willow feeding swallows through a hungry night until they weary of elation. let all buckets spill, all loss be light. I saw two talking girls weaving rainbows in their eyes, and daughtering in me their dreams, I grew astonished by all conception, by the frail grandeur of life. Thank you all. There we have it. I have books up here for sale as well if anybody was interested in that. So, and this is a bookstore. I think they have others out
We
there.
have a few out there, but yeah, if you want a book, James will sign it for you. You can talk to him.
Anything you would like, I will do. Thank you, Michael, for coming back for this. We waited for him so we could do this reading.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Thank you all for coming. James is going to hang out for a bit, so if you want to come and do a little one-on-one, we'll all be
I'll
sitting
be
around
here.
So thank you again, James. You're a star. Everybody.
You try reading from memory where everybody walks
I
in
know.
back and
I
forth.
know.
I don't know.
Thanks, guys.